Hello, welcome back. For a long time, Jonathan McReynolds carried his platform with humility and quiet strength, delivering gospel music that was deeply emotional and true to life. While fans applauded his sincerity, few realized he was silently enduring emotional struggles that went beyond what his songs hinted at. His voice became the soundtrack for a new generation of Christians who didn't have it all together, but still showed up. Then, unexpectedly, gospel singer Andria Johnson, known for being blunt and unfiltered, came forward with a revelation that shook fans to their core. She exposed a side of Jonathan that no one had seen, painting a picture of a man crushed by the very system that once praised him. To understand the weight of her words, you have to understand who Jonathan McReynolds is. From the beginning, he was never about spectacle. His rise came through vulnerability, through lyrics that spoke to people who didn't feel perfect but still believed. Songs like No Gray and albums like Live Music and Make Room didn't just showcase his talent, they invited listeners into a spiritual journey filled with questions, temptations, and personal battles. Yet despite his transparency in music, Jonathan never publicly spoke about the toll his career took on him. He was caught in a delicate balancing act, criticized by traditional believers for not being churchy enough and misunderstood by secular audiences who didn't grasp his conviction. His references to mental health and spiritual struggle were always subtle, never direct. That is, until Andria shattered the illusion. In an unscripted Instagram live, Andria began talking to her followers like she often did, raw, honest, and passionate. But midway through, she suddenly changed course and brought up Jonathan. She told her audience that behind Jonathan's calm demeanor was a man who had been through incredible emotional pain. She said he'd been judged, ridiculed, and emotionally manipulated by some of the very people who celebrated him in public. She described moments where he would break down during studio recordings, suffer panic attacks before performances, and cry alone after interviews where he had pretended to be okay. According to her, Jonathan had been told by church leaders that he wasn't man enough, wasn't spiritual enough, and didn't fit the mold of what a gospel leader should be. She claimed he had been silently crucified by people who masked cruelty as correction. And then she said something that hit home: if people knew what Jonathan had carried, they'd fall to their knees in guilt, because many of them had a hand in his suffering without even realizing it. The internet exploded. Some fans applauded her courage. Others thought she had gone too far. But no one could ignore what she said. The question lingered in the air: why hadn't Jonathan spoken up himself? What was he going through that had left him voiceless in his own pain? As it turns out, Jonathan had been confiding in a small circle of friends, and one of them was Andria. They had kept in touch privately for years, sharing late-night texts, prayers, and words of encouragement whenever either of them felt overwhelmed. Andria shared one message from Jonathan that brought many to tears. "Sis, I don't think I'm built for this. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm drowning." That message, sent during the time he was working on his critically acclaimed song People, revealed just how much he had been suffering. Fans saw a masterpiece. He felt like he was falling apart. Friends close to Jonathan said he experienced frequent panic attacks and often doubted whether he had any value left to give. Even after changing lives through his music, he still questioned whether God could use someone like him. The pressure to be flawless, to be holy while barely holding himself together, nearly made him quit. One particularly cutting remark from a church leader who told him he'd never be a true minister devastated him so deeply that he almost walked away from gospel music altogether. Through it all, Andria reminded him he wasn't alone. She recognized his pain because it mirrored her own, the feeling of being used but never protected. Things came to a head at a private worship night in Atlanta. There were no cameras, no flashy promotions, just broken people seeking healing. Jonathan was there, exhausted and emotionally drained. When Andria began singing an unfiltered version of Better Days, something shifted in the room. Jonathan broke down in tears. Then, Andria did something powerful. She paused the song, walked over to him, and told him in front of everyone that he was still chosen. That despite what people had said or assumed about him, he still carried purpose. They prayed together, In that moment, raw and unrehearsed, and something beautiful happened. Others in the room began to cry. People dropped to their knees. It felt like something sacred was happening, a collective release of pain and shame. Someone who witnessed it later said it wasn't just Jonathan being healed, it was everyone who had ever felt unseen or unworthy in the church. The ripple effects were immediate. One pastor who had previously criticized Jonathan publicly apologized in a live-stream sermon, saying he'd forgotten that even gospel artists are human. Hashtags began trending, "Let them heal" and hashtag "No more silent suffering." Jonathan's story had opened a wider conversation about emotional health and the dangers of spiritual perfectionism. Andria joined him on tour for the Other Side of the Altar sessions, where they sang a new duet called "Grace Still Works." It wasn't just a performance, it was a statement. After they finished, she addressed the crowd and said, "This is what church should look like: real, raw, and still reaching." Jonathan McReynolds didn't just survive the storm, he turned it into a mission. His willingness to be honest became a lifeline for others. His pain became a mirror for people who had been hiding theirs. His decision to stay, to speak up, and to keep creating changed more than just his path. It shifted the way the church talks about mental health, identity, and the quiet suffering that so many hide behind their faith. This story is bigger than him. It's a reminder that we're all carrying something, and that healing starts when someone dares to tell the truth.